Through tech errors and time errors, it's Fragments of Silicon.
Thankfully, that wasn't a jinx.
Yeah, sorry, it was just what was on my mind.
I'm like, Penny's breathing very heavily over there.
Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong.
You are correct, actually. Everything is working fine. Anyway, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me, as always, are my good friends, Golix and Petty. So I suppose we'll get to the news, such as it is. Golix, why don't you start us off this week?
Well, the tech errors I was referring to was actually the fact that my headset is starting to have some occasional issues with the wire, probably because it's always had tangling issues, and between the tangling and the untangling, I think something might have come kind of loose. And I'm also having problems with my headset at work, so
How long it had said headsets?
this one is actually fairly new. Only been a few months. Well, I guess it's been like 6 months. Apparently, I got this one in January. But I recognize that I was probably not handling it in the right way. I'm probably just gonna get another one.
Okay.
Anyway, otherwise it's let's see. The cards for my Diabloramon deck that I'm trying to make have started coming in, although they're not all in yet. So that's good. I'll be able to play with those soon. And hopefully this evening, probably, I'm going to try and beat the main story of Super Robot Wars 30. So we'll see how that goes.
Yes. Well, at least you will. Right. So, anything else?
I think that's all.
Okay. Then you're up, Petty.
Overall, it's been fairly quiet this week. No lugging around heavy objects. No monumental purchases. So, yay.
That's good, I
yes.
suppose.
I mean, I would not like to drop another almost $1,000 on an air conditioner again anytime soon.
Yes, I'd imagine so.
And yeah, just overall, not a whole lot going on.
I guess it's my go.
Yep.
Let's see. Got new nose clips this week. As like any glasses wearer will tell you, like periodically you need to get those replaced because they get grotty. And
plus, it's usually just a good idea to have your prescription double checked every once in a while.
I'm like, it wasn't my prescription. It was just I needed to get new what they call nose pads, apparently. Not just because they had a lot of grime on them.
Yeah, and they're a bitch and a half to clean, so it's better to just replace them.
Yeah, it's like plus at the local Walmart they're like $3, $3.50. So it was just easier to do all that and go in and I've done the fine cleaning before and it is tedious and annoying. So
aren't those one of the things that's usually included in those sunglasses repair kits that they sell at like the checkout lane? And
potentially, but I'm not talking about sunglasses either. Did
I say sunglasses? I meant just glasses repair kits. I'm sure it would be a pain in the ass to do anyway. I'm not saying you should just do this. I wasn't sure.
Yeah. Point is, just needed to get the nose pads. I got my glasses last year, so I'm like, I did get a notice about an eye examination, which was weird because it's only been a year. It's
Yeah.
at least 2 years. So don't know what the hell wrong with that, but I just tossed it and like, I don't need new glasses according to the law of prescriptions. Anyway, let's see. Uh, got a haircut for the summer, which is always nice. Like,
Should probably do one of those soon.
I mean, down here that.
Oh yeah, if I lived in Florida, I would definitely need to.
Yes. And yeah, I suppose that's about it for my news. Nothing major, but such is the game of life at times. Just it's a bunch of minutiae at points. Anyway, so merrily we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast, and it is our grand pleasure to welcome back to the program David Brevik.
Hello.
Oh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Can't complain. I think we're all doing reasonably well today.
Great.
Right. So let's see. If I'm recalling correctly, I believe we had you on the program in January as your capacity as president of Skystone Games, and talked about a bunch of things from this is actually a bit different because we're going to be talking about Graybeard Games.
Sounds good.
Yes. Though I suppose before we get to the game, the actual game we got on display here, we would need to go back and talk about Diablo. Or at least because if I recall correctly, you worked on the original Diablo?
Yeah, yes, I did. I was president of Blizzard North, and I was the creator of the concept of Diablo, and I was the lead programmer and kind of co-lead designer, and did a lot of the parts of Diablo. Was kind of final say on a lot of things and stuff like that. So heavily worked on Diablo and Diablo 2. And then after Diablo 2, I left. So that was the last one I worked on.
Sounds about right. A lot of people left after Diablo 2. And I want to bring up the Diablo games because, I'm not sure if they're considered RPGs, but, they're in the same ballpark. And,
Well, yeah, I mean, that was kind of a funny thing. Nobody really knew what to call it at the time. When it came out, everybody's like, I don't know, it was kind of like the Reese's peanut butter cups of games at that point. It was like, is this, you put action in my RPG, you put RPG in my action or whatever. And people didn't even know what to call it. And that was where the term action RPG, ARPG came from, was like Diablo. It was invented for Diablo. But people use ARPG to mean almost anything these days, any kind of RPG with action, which, the definition of what an ARPG is applies to almost every game out there at this point. So, any kind of game with any kind of advancement system, you could maybe consider it an ARPG. So that's a big thing. So I think ARPG is the term that I tend to use.
Potentially, but the term action RPG actually predates Diablo and goes back to things like Secret of Mana. When it comes to Diablo, I've heard more things like hack and slash, and especially dungeon crawler, to really describe the genre, more than anything else. Though I suppose
Diablo
I don't know if it's the only thing, but back in the day, a lot of places called games like Secret of Mana adventure games, which is not inaccurate, but it's not the name we use now, because that also means something else.
Well, there is a whole debate about this because the whole adventure designation comes from Zelda, because Nintendo called that an adventure game. Action RPG is because it had the action of Zelda, but it also had the RPG stuff from Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. But anyway, I bring up these titles because I'm wondering how much of the design ethos of the old Diablo games made it into It Lurks Below here.
Well, a lot of stuff. It has kind of a lot of similarities in terms of the world is randomly generated. It has uh, kind of different difficulty modes, kind of normal, nightmare, hell kind of difficulty modes. It's got randomly generated item systems, and it's very action oriented. It's got 8 different character classes that all have their own kind of like skills that you can advance. So in many ways, it's very similar. It's got a lot of stat-based combat and things like that. So it, it definitely shares a lot in common with that, but it's a different perspective, and it's got a lot more crafting and digging and things like that that are things that I really enjoy. I really enjoy those kind of those kind of exploring, adventure-y kind of games where you're I never played Terraria, but people compare it to Terraria. But I played a lot of Minecraft, and so that was really kind of the original basis was kind of a simplified version of Minecraft.
I mean, that's the basis for Terraria, if you want to know. Like,
Right.
it's very, but looking at the game, I can definitely see where the Terraria comparisons come into play. Although I'm not sure how like Terraria this game actually would be.
Right. It's not really. I mean, I didn't really do a lot of the things like. I also played a game a lot called Starbound that I really enjoyed at the beginning of early access. In my opinion, didn't go well as it got further in development. I enjoyed it less. I enjoyed it more at the beginning of development. But I kind of wanted a little bit of that feeling and vibe as well. But I didn't go and do something where I was going to have a bunch of different biomes. Like I wanted to be focused on kind of dungeon crawling and having. So the world isn't very big to explore. It's not about going out and going to find the jungle or some forest or like the desert or whatever. They're not these different regions or whatever. It's just one little town and you're going down. So that it's kind of in the title. It lurks below. You're going down into the dungeons.
Yeah, and I think that's another reason why Terraria gets brought up, because it's got that kind of same functionality, maybe not in quite the same way, but once again, it's in its name, Terraria.
Right.
Birds and such. But I suppose that does bring a question to mind. How do you reach the underground? Do you dig, or is there like a cave?
You dig. You just dig straight down, and as you're digging, you can dig around. There are randomly generated rooms and stuff. It's kind of a cave-like structure, and you kind of walk around, find rooms and dig into the rooms, and the rooms are full of monsters. And then kind of at the bottom of a layer there's many different layers to the world. And the dirt and stuff changes color, and you can tell that there's kind of these bands. And at the bottom of that, there is a dungeon that takes up basically the entire width of the play area. And so, that has a boss in it, and you don't have to. You could bypass it. You don't have to go in and kill the boss, but there's a lot of great rewards for killing the boss. So it's greatly encouraged, and you have quests and stuff to prompt you.
Okay, so I suppose that does beckon a question. If the end goal isn't to kill the boss of the dungeon, what is the end goal, if anything?
Well, the dungeon has many different layers and many different bosses. So the ultimate goal is to kill it, and it lurks far below.
Right. I mean, I suppose. Like, what is it, if it can be mentioned?
It shall remain nameless. It is. I wanted kind of like almost a Cthulhu-esque feeling to it, where humans can't utter the name, that kind of thing. So it's more described as evil more than named.
But you can kill it, apparently.
Oh yeah, you can kill it. Well, it can kill you too.
Right, but I think that's actually a big difference between this thing and an actual old one. It's like
Right.
right. It's like,
Right. Yeah. An old one or an ancient one or whatever they had. Those are, yes, unkillable a lot of times in that mythos. But that
But
that I
I mean,
wanted that.
Cthulhu wasn't particularly happy after getting a boat rammed through his head.
no.
He
But
got better, but like he wasn't happy about it.
right. So yeah, this was mainly, it just kind of gives you a way to, much like Diablo, the goal is in the name. You're going down to kind of kill bosses along the way to uncovering the kind of mystery of what's going on.
All right. And what's in the town?
The town is, you create a town. So one of the things that you do is that you kind of build buildings, and buildings come out as like blueprints. So you discover blueprints, or you're given blueprints to different buildings as you progress through the game in different kind of milestones and completing quests and stuff. And you can make you make a store, and you take all the materials. You have to find the materials you have to chop down trees and dig up or find particular blocks or whatever, and or craft them. And then once you have them, then you can create the blueprint. Once you have the blueprint, then you can place the object in the world. And so you're placing an entire building, you place it down, and you can drag it out of your inventory and place it in the world. And then so you kind of build your town and decide where the buildings are going and stuff. And then that building has some function. It could be a store, it could be a bank, it could be a variety of different things. There's special rooms that have portals to other places. There's a hat vendor. There's a bunch of different buildings that you can create.
Okay.
And you make the town as you go.
Do you have to recruit townspeople as well?
No, when you place the building, it comes with a townsperson.
Okay. And is there sort of a definition of a town? Like, do you have to have all these certain amount of stores, houses, what have you, to have a town? Or is it just a loose designation?
Yeah, it's kind of a loose designation that I just call town. But since you're placing it, there really isn't they have to have these amount of buildings in a specific area or something like that. It's just, you can only place buildings in the upper layer of the world, but you can place them in different ways that you want. You can place them. You could build a little platform and place them up in the sky or whatever you wanted to do. Place them on top of each other or next to each other, or, clear a big flat space and put them down or whatever. But there's kind of another section of the upper area, the upper crust, which is corrupted. There's some corrupted ground, and that corruption grows over time. And so there are things that you can do to slow down the corruption and stop the corruption from spreading. But that corruption, then you can't place things in the corruption and whatnot, and monsters spawn in the corruption. So, you want to come back and you want to defend. There'll be little invasions, and you want to defend your town. Come up and you can't use the stores and stuff while an invasion's going on. And you come back to the town. There's a way to teleport back and forth between the dungeon, kind of like a town portal. You can think of it as, I call it recall. You go back and forth between this magic stone and the dungeon. Last place you were in the dungeon, you can go back and forth and come back and fight the invasion and kind of free your townspeople or bring them back. So you can use buildings and stuff again. So there's so it's got kind of different sections of the upper zone, and that has kind of a corruption, like I said, as well as your buildings and you have to kind of place it smartly so that it's easier to defend against these invasions.
That certainly sounds like a task. And are there any surface level bosses to be wary of?
Yeah, at the very beginning, there's a surface boss that that you have to fight. It's kind of along your quest chain. Commander Vile, and he's really kind of first. He's not really a boss. He's more like almost like a mini boss, but he's definitely the toughest enemy that you'll fight at the very beginning. And so once you do that, that kind of opens up some new items that you can create, and it really gives you a chance to kind of dig down further into kind of the next zone underneath the ground. So that's one of the and killing him stops the corruption from spreading. So you want to kind of get to that early. So getting Commander Vile down as kind of fast as possible is definitely, but too fast, he's really tough. So it's it's the balance of how much are you gonna go down and dig up some iron to make some iron armor and weapons and stuff versus how much time are you gonna let the corruption spread. And so there's this kind of push and pull on timing there. So that's kind of the first boss that you would fight, and then each invasion has a boss as well, a kind of a mini boss.
And how many invasion types are there?
There's only a few different invasion types. That I would say there's only kind of one invasion type. It's just a group of monsters that attack the town. But the types of monsters that attack the town change over time. So they gain new abilities. Some will end up flying, or some will end up, being able to teleport and glide through walls and things like that. So there's other types of enemies that you'll face as the invasions kind of progress through the game.
Okay. And getting back to the town, what sorts of buildings can you build? Like, I assume things like a smith and a general store, but what else would be in that mix?
Yeah, I think one of the big key buildings is the bank. The bank has a lot of really cool things. First and foremost, it's a place where you can store your items, which, that's having it, an overflow of a place where you can store all sorts of items is really helpful. And you can always buy new kind of tabs at the bank, and it allows you to increase your kind of storage, and you use in-game gold to buy new tabs of storage. And then as well as it has a vault, and the vault is an item that you can place items in there and then load up or create other characters, and they can take it out. So it's a shared kind of account level storage area. So that is a really cool thing to have that allows you to kind of really set up some of your future characters and allow you to play all sorts of other types of characters. And that's encouraged because there's a lot of multi-classing that goes on in the game. One of the things is you kind of create, as you unlock different skills with characters, classes, you can create another character and then use the skills that you've unlocked with that character on the other one. So if you, let's say you make a bard and you unlock his 6 or so skills that you level them up a little bit, and you've unlocked some of their skills, you can then go and create a cleric. And then while you're playing the cleric at certain level ranks, you can go and you can clone the skill from that character, the bard that you'd played, and make a bard cleric hybrid character. There's no real end to this. You can, put in a rogue or a necromancer or whatever you want, and you kind of create your own character class and your own hybrid class, and pick and choose the skills that you want from the other classes. As you have to play them first to unlock them, but once you played them, then you can unlock them, and that's all done through the vault as well.
Okay, and is there permadeath in this game?
There is. There's a hardcore. I mean, you don't have to choose that way. There are several different game modes. One game mode, kind of the default one, is survival, but you can play hardcore survival, which is permadeath. version. Then there's also Descent one, which kind of gets rid of a lot of the farming and because you have to feed yourself and things like that. There's hunger and stamina and whatnot, and so it gets rid of a lot of that stuff and a lot of the crafting stuff and focuses more on I'm just going down and killing monsters. And then there's a creative mode which allows there's lots of materials that you can just pick and gather and stuff, and the monsters are easier, kind of an easier version of that. There's no hardcore version of that, but there is hardcore Descent and hardcore survival.
That sounds about right. I mean, those are all modes from Minecraft, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, right, exactly. Similar kind of things.
Yeah. And going back to the classes, what are the classes that you can be in this game?
In the game, there is Bard, Cleric, Paladin, Warrior, Necromancer, Rogue, Wizard, and Enchanter.
Okay. Sounds like there's a few magic types there.
Absolutely. And the magic is different than other games. I mean, your wand in this game, I use the term wand very loosely here, is basically like a gun. It's just, pew, 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 kind of is the way that you're shooting your wand. So it feels a lot like, it's got kind of different types of spray patterns. You can have beam wands and you can have spray wands and you can have ricocheting wands and things like that. So you can think of it kind of as almost an old school video gamey gun, is the way that I've treated wands in the game. So there is quite a few magic classes, and so that plays a role. And you, as the character class, you either are melee or you are ranged, wand using class, except for Cleric can use either one. Well, they have like a mace and shield or a wand you can use, but the rest of the character classes, you're either one or the other. And so that, is one way that you can experience the game in a very different way. The characters are set up differently and focus on different stats differently and stuff like that to enable their gameplay, the type of gameplay that they have.
Indeed. And you mentioned multi-classing. How does that work exactly?
Well, like I said, it really involves kind of leveling up the different classes. So you create a character, you level them up. As you level them up, they unlock new skills, and the skills in the game are a variety of different books that you can equip. And so you have a certain amount of slots of skills that you can equip, and you can decide what goes in those, I believe, 6 slots. And so there are skills or things that can go in that bar that drop in the game, as well as there are some that are unlocked when you're playing the different character classes. So at any time you can go to the vault at the bank, and the ones that you've unlocked on your account are there on a page in the vault. You can go to a different page and it's got a list of the different, hey, these are the ones you've unlocked for Bard, these are the ones you've unlocked for Cleric, these are the ones you've unlocked for Warrior, whatever it is. And you can just pick that item out and it'll make a copy of it for you, and you can put it in your bar and you can use those skills. The skills take gold to level up, and you have to be a specific level to use them. But you can then say, hey, I want this particular skill from this class, and I want this particular skill from this other class. Oh, I really liked Necromancer having the little skull pets or whatever, and so I'm going to use that one. And I really like the teleport skill from the Wizard, so I'm going to use that one. And then I'm mainly going to be playing a Bard, so I've got a couple of the Bard skills on my bar. So I'm kind of a hybrid Bard and Cleric, a Bard and a Wizard, and whatever combinations you can think of. So you kind of pick and choose the different skills and create your own character class.
Okay, so it's more about picking. It's more about skills than actual class, then.
Well, sort of, because the class has specific mechanics associated with it that encourage you to use your skills in some way. Like, for instance, a paladin has the ability to gain this buff that only a paladin can use. And so some of their skills say, hey, if you're using this buff, then this particular skill is even more powerful. So you kind of take that into consideration when you're like, okay, I'm going to do multi-class stuff, but I'm, want to make sure that I'm maximizing my damage from, or, durability or whatever it is from a paladin. So I'm choosing paladin as kind of my base. Because that's the only way that I'm going to be able to maximize these particular skills. So it's kind of coming up with a concept of what you want to do, and there's different strategies to using the different base classes. Oh, I really want to use cleric because they're the only ones can melee or range, and I really like that gameplay. So maybe that might be something that stands out to you. So choosing the base class is important, and it can change the way that the character plays for sure.
And are there any like incompatible skills or classes?
No, not really. All the skills were designed so that anybody can use them. Except for there are, I guess, a few skills that don't work very well. Like I can't remember exactly whether or not there are some requirements for some skills. Like maybe I'm thinking like whirlwind for the whirlwind skill for the warrior. I think you have to be melee in order to use that, or you have to have a melee item equipped for it to work. There may be a few of those, but there are not very many. If there are some.
Okay. And on the flip side, it sounds like you can have an all-class character, or that is to say,
Sure.
I'm not saying it would work very well, but
Right. Well, it's sort of like I compare it a little bit to Magic the Gathering. You can go with a rainbow deck. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's better to concentrate on 2 or 3 colors and maximize the combinations that work with those 2 or 3 particular, colors that create a powerful deck in Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, that makes sense. And shifting things a bit, is there multiplayer in this game?
There is not multiplayer. However, I have been working on co-op, and that is very close. So I'm hoping that finishes pretty soon. So I have quite a few jobs right now, and they have higher priority than Graybeard Games, unfortunately. But in my spare time, I'm still working on It Lurks Below, and I'm still creating patches, and have been hard at work at trying to get the co-op stuff working so that people can play together.
And have people been looking forward to that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's absolutely the number one request is multiplayer, and people are really excited about it. And it's split screen, and it's playing really well. There are only a few remaining bugs, saving, loading, whether or not you create new characters or load old ones, all of that stuff. That's all working. So I'm getting real close to having it fully done.
Well, that is good to hear. Is that the only kind of update that's being worked on, or is there going to be another content update?
Yeah, there is more content coming. There's also some more skills, as well as there's also, you not only have the skills on your character in terms of combat skills and things like that, but you also have a survival tree. And that unlocks all sorts of recipes, different ways to create things like, I can now make a greenhouse, or I can make a composter, or I can do all sorts of stuff. There are all these different recipes you can unlock through this tree. and there's a bunch of new nodes that are coming in that are coming into that tree. I added a few kind of at the beginning of the year, and then I have designs for probably 15 or so more nodes on that tree as well as some new content. There's a new place to go. So that is being worked on. It's slow, but it is being worked on.
I'm assuming that you are the only developer on this particular game.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. I did it. I mean, my wife helped me with design and things like that, and she did a little bit of coding. And my daughter made some of the pixel art. One of my daughters, but I've done 9% or 95% or whatever of the game. I made my own engine. I did most of the graphics. I did all of the music and sound effects and things like that. I did it all basically by myself.
That does sound painstaking.
It is painstaking. It also means it's slow to make content. So that's.
And have you given any consideration to bringing it Lurks Below to other platforms?
Yeah, it's on console. It was part of the Game Pass program on Xbox, and so it is on Xbox.
Okay. And was it well received on Game Pass?
Yeah. I mean, they were really happy. I was super happy with the Game Pass stuff, and got a lot of people playing it on Game Pass and talking to me about it. And I did a bunch of work to try and get I made it so that the Xbox and Game Pass versions, like the save files, were compatible with Steam and things like that. So you can transfer your characters back and forth and stuff. So I'm really pleased with the way that went. We got a big boost to the community when it came out.
And how long ago was that?
Xbox, it was probably almost 2 years ago now, something like that, that it came out on Xbox.
Yeah. So I suppose the other question here is, have you explored any options towards the PlayStation or the Switch yet?
Switch is definitely something I've considered. I have worked on a Switch version, but and I think that would be excellent for the Switch. But it's really a choice between fixing, having new content and putting in the co-op or whatever, or working on the Switch. And I felt like the co-op and the new content was more important than going to Switch first. So the big problem with it is that I created my own engine. I mean, there are advantages and disadvantages to this. The advantage was that it's super efficient. It runs at extremely high frame rate. I know exactly how everything works. I can customize it in any way that I want to. I can do all sorts of crazy graphic things. Like I later added bloom and all sorts of stuff to technical things to the engine or whatever to make it perform really well. So there's a lot of technical things that I can do to make it, and the game's tiny. I have my own compression stuff in there and things like that make the game really, really small, and I can patch a lot. And the patches are like 2 and 3 megabytes and stuff like that. So, people really love the fact that it is such a tiny game and has so much gameplay. But the disadvantage of that is that I can't do what other people on Unity and Unreal and stuff can do, where it's like, hey, just check this box and now it's compiling for Switch or whatever. And yeah, there's a few things you got to do or whatever, but it's not nearly the same as I have to write the entire engine from scratch on a different platform. So that makes it much more difficult.
Indeed. Given that you are just you on this game and there are other foci, it makes sense that a Switch version would not be immediately forthcoming.
Right. Yeah. I hope one day we get there.
Yeah. And I suppose my last question in regards to ports is not that this is a thing that would happen, but have you given consideration to a mobile version?
Yeah, actually, that is something I've considered. I think that a lot of games are going to be going to mobile in the future. I think that even bigger games, like we've seen this a little bit in kind of AAA style gameplay or development, where you can play Fortnite on your phone, or you can play Genshin Impact or whatever. Like there are a lot of people, a lot of games I think are going to be targeting mobile platforms as just another platform that people can play our content on. And so I imagine that it would work really well for me to make It Lurks Below on mobile. I think it would be a great fit.
Okay. And I'll see if my colleagues here have any specific questions for you.
I think I'm good.
Oh, sorry. I muted myself and then realized that I was already unmuted. Anyway, I think I'm good.
All right.
Sorry.
Right. Well then, and I'm good with my questions. So, David, I want to thank you for being with us here today.
My
And
pleasure.
indeed, and talking about It Lurks Below. I'm certainly excited to see what, when the co-op comes out, and the new content. And indeed, in the meantime, you can pick up It Lurks Below on both Steam and GOG. Is this on the Epic Game Store yet?
It is not yet.
Are there plans?
Yeah, I have been talking to them about it.
Okay. But in the meantime, you can pick it up on, once again, Steam and GOG for $19.99. And Petty, play us to the next segment. All right, welcome to the topic of discussion. So, I forget if I mentioned this last week, but I suppose it bears mentioning again. But given that June is the month of premieres, given that E3 isn't a thing this year, apparently it's coming back next year. I guess they can try with that, but
Yeah. Part of me wants
it
it to
takes
come
two
back
to
just
tango.
because.
It's not just okay. The ESA's announced E3's coming back. It's
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if that happens.
A lot of me wants it to come back just 'cause it's easier to block off a week in your schedule than whatever the fuck this shotgun approach is this year.
Tell me about it. Now, though it kind of speaks to, the reason why E3 collapsed isn't because of, like the desire to do more events and all that stuff. Well, I mean, it was the COVID, but it was already collapsing under the weight of the ESA's bullshit. So, like Sony walked away from E3 in 2019, 2020, or it was before that the COVID hit. I do remember that. And I don't think Sony's coming back. And just a lot of people, have problems with the ESA, especially when they their data got leaked.
Yeah,
remember
that's not a good look.
Yeah. So, as I said, the ESA can reestablish E3, sure, but it's like, who's signing up? Like, if nobody's signing up, then it doesn't really matter if E3 comes back. It just becomes another show of the summer. So with that in mind, what we're going to be talking about on a given day this month could change, as we saw last week. Though, this time around, I was reasonably certain we would get to Wednesday with the state of play, because, once again, when it comes to video game news, platform holders often have the strongest of news lineups. And, this is no exception. I suppose it being an exception is the state of play was actually worth watching this time. because
I'm
they actually
remembering
had
the clusterfuck that was it last year or the year before last?
they sometimes have multiple state of plays in the year. Like usually they do, but it's like
I was
it's,
more referring to like the E3 presentation.
I think that might have been 2018
Yeah.
when they only had like the 4 or 5 games to show off.
Yes, I think it was like Ghost of Tsukushima was one of them. It was like 30
Yeah.
minute.
Yeah. And the Last of Us 2.
Mhm.
That was the year that Disney XD broadcast E3.
That's right.
Like, yeah, that
God, that was a
didn't.
train wreck.
Yes, it was. Because I'm like, the Sony conference was not for children. Oh God, no.
Only
But anyway,
really Nintendo's is for children, but moving on.
But I mean, that really wasn't for
Oh
children.
God, no, especially that year.
Yeah. I mean, they had to section off some content because rated M for mature on a kids network. Yeah, that happened, or sort of happened. Anyway, getting back to the state of play. So, once again, there were. It wasn't the longest thing in the world, and it wasn't dense like a Nintendo Direct tends to be.
Did it start with the state of play is strong?
Fuck off.
Yes, but unspoken, because they did a more traditional structuring of a conference, because how that usually works is you usually start off with a banger and end with a banger, and you have ups and downs throughout the middle, and you can see this here because the conference started with the Resident Evil 4 remake.
I'm not trying to call that a banger, but go on.
The latest in the series of remaking every Resident Evil game.
No, and
okay,
boy,
every Resident Evil game except Code Veronica.
Oh God, they are fucking loud. I'm like, oh no, like the Code Veronica devotees are not happy about this.
They're worse than fucking Animal Crossing devotees. Let's be fucking real here.
At this point, yeah, because a new Animal Crossing was going to happen at some point. Code Veronica, yeah, legitimately may never get remade.
I'm okay with this.
I'm like, and I get it, I do, because like Resident Evil Code Veronica, like it's a mainline entry in the Resident Evil series.
As you can tell, because it doesn't have a number on it.
Yeah, that's the problem. This is why we get Resident Evil 3 remade instead of Resident Evil Code Veronica. In storyline terms, Code Veronica is much more important than 3. But like I said, Code Veronica, since it doesn't have the number designation, it gets treated like it's a side game. It's a spin-off. It's not a numbered entry, therefore it doesn't count. And therefore won't get remade, apparently. Or they could do this after 4, but if you're surprised that that Resident Evil 4 getting the priority remake was a thing, you didn't notice how many times Capcom's put out Resident Evil 4.
It's okay to be disappointed, but if you're surprised, we need to have a talk.
Yes. And yeah, there's also the argument that Resident Evil 4 doesn't need a remake, though let's be honest here. Yeah, the game continues to get ported, but it's still a 2005
that was what, PlayStation 3?
No, GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the tops of what that console could produce, but we're still looking at a system that was released in 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So
Resi 4 is literally just about old enough to drink at this point.
It's getting there. Still got a few more years, but it's definitely in that ballpark. I think people have don't contend with how old Resident Evil 4 actually is at this point. Like, it's
Well,
just
it was the thing is it's in the era where the fairly long era where they have, you know, decent 3D games that look pretty decent. They're not photorealistic yet, which is only where they're getting like it pretty recently. But
yeah. It's also it didn't need the um like the control updates that
yeah, this one started without tank controls.
it's got tank controls, make no mistake, but
Oh, sorry, it started without fixed camera.
yeah, that was the key. Like, granted, Resident Evil 4 plays weird by modern standards because they got rid of because you have to stop to shoot. That's you laugh, but that's actually part of the survival horror secret sauce here.
I know.
You know,
And then
that-
was it 5 or 6 just said, nah, fuck it, we're going full action game.
yeah. I mean, see also Dead Space. Like Dead Space 1 is a lot closer to Resident Evil 4 than its sequels are, and kind of tread along the same path here. They made the movement freer to make the action more dynamic, but when you do that, and you keep in mind people had a problem with Resident Evil 4's combat being much more dynamic than Resident Evil games typically were up to that point. But the simple fact of the matter is Resident Evil had to change with the times. That particular style of survival horror was born out of the limitations of the PlayStation and pre-rendered camera angles, and just was becoming stale. Like Resident Evil 0 just stands out as something that was freaky in 2003. But yeah, so they started off with Resident Evil 4. They ended with Final Fantasy 16. And I guess we technically know more about Final Fantasy 16, but we don't know a ton more.
I think the most interesting thing I've read is that it's involving different crew than most of the other recent ones.
I'm like, I think I was surprised that they actually gave a name to the development team.
Oh yeah, they're the 14 team.
Yeah, like they were officially credited as
14
creative.
And 12.
No, the team behind this is being credited as Business Creative Unit 3.
Yep.
I'm like, that's the first time I've seen that on the trailer. Usually just Square Enix.
Yeah, since the later Final Fantasy 14 trailers, they've started actually getting credited because the animation team is fucking amazing.
Right. And so it is the case here. And the biggest revelation to come out of the Final Fantasy 16 trailer here was that the summons, and when I say the summons, the core subset of summons that you think of when you think of Final Fantasy summons, Ramua, Ifrit, Shiva,
Bahamut. Bahamut's
was
in
shown
there.
Yeah, trying to remember exactly who, but I know it's, yeah. I'm like anyway, that cast of characters you could we'll probably also see Chocobo show up.
Oh yeah,
and Phoenix I think was there as well. I think that was the first one shown actually.
Which is pretty relevant because I mean they don't get rid of them entirely, but they haven't been super important since I don't know. I think they were in 13, but they were people Shiva was two sisters that was some guy's bike.
Yeah. Point is, the summons are front and center, literally. We don't exactly know in what capacity, if they are acting as summons or say alter egos, but it is nice to see that, for lack of a better term, crew back in focus. Because summons are some of the more popular aspects of Final Fantasy, I'd say. Anyway, bouncing back to more of the beginning, they showed off a bunch of VR stuff, including Resident Evil Village is going to be coming to PlayStation VR 2. I know that's actually pretty hotly anticipated because apparently, like Resident Evil 7 had a really good VR mode that's, I think, still tied to the original PlayStation VR for whatever reason. Excuse me. And let's see. No Man's Sky is heading to the PlayStation VR 2. And also The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners Chapter 2 Retribution. That is a mouthful. And that is a Walking Dead thing that I have no idea about. Anyway, and I suppose rounding out the heavy hitters, at least known quantities, is the latest Sony PlayStation PC port was announced to be Marvel's Spider-Man. Both Marvel's Spider-Man Remastered and Miles Morales will be heading to the PC.
So I guess they've gotten all of the this is an our console exclusive juice out of that they wanted to.
Yeah, that is like the PlayStation people have stated that is exactly what that means. You know, don't expect day one ports, at least right now, from Sony. Unlike Microsoft, which has, let's just say, a much longer PC heritage thing.
Yeah. Spoiler: the Xbox is literally running Windows 10.
Also worth noting, the port job being done is going to be the first by Nixxes Software, which Sony acquired last year. If you don't know who Nixxes is, they actually have a long history of porting things, usually to the PC, but also sometimes to like a different console. And they worked a lot with Crystal Dynamics /IDOS /Square Enix. As in, they ported many Legacy of Kain games, Hitman games, Deus Ex games, so on and so forth. And they also, their last project with Square Enix was doing some of the development on the Avengers. No, I don't think anyone knows why Square Enix didn't buy them, but given the fact that the Square Enix is selling off pretty much all of that now, I don't think they were all that interested in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And I bring this up because Sony kind of needed a porting hand to come in, because their PC ports haven't exactly been great up to this point. I guess they've been getting better. I certainly didn't hear as much shit about God of War as I did about Stray Dogs, and especially Horizon Zero Dawn.
Yeah. The Zero Dawn port is just an oof.
Yeah. So, like I said, getting a solid hand to actually bring the game over to the PC was a good idea. Anyway, and as far as the rest of the conference, bunch of either indie games or smaller games that don't necessarily have the pedigree that all these established franchises obviously have. I almost missed the Horizon spin-off for the PlayStation 2. The PSVR 2, Horizon Call of the Mountain. There.
Yeah.
But anyway,
good luck with that, Sony.
Yeah, in terms of original games, we have the Callisto Protocol, which is Dead Space without the Dead Space.
Dead Space with serial numbers filed off.
Because, surprise, the development team here worked on Dead Space.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's being offered here. Worth noting that this game is set to launch in December, which is a good deal before the Dead Space remake is supposed to come out. Let's see, we had Roller Dome, which is, I don't know, it's roller derby with guns, which is, I'm kind of surprised wasn't a real thing that exists in this fucking country at some point. Like,
yeah.
yeah. Worth keeping an eye on this one because it's being done by the creator of the Ali franchise, Roll 7. So, and granted, while those are nice games, this is definitely on a larger, grander scale than any of the Ali games, even World, I'd say. Stray, aka The Adventures of Robo Kitty, got a release date and is coming as part of PlayStation Plus in July. Like,
yeah, I want to look into that.
I have some friends who are looking forward to that one. It looks very cute.
And I think it's also, I believe it got a physical release announced from I Am 8-Bit. Let's see, we had Eternanites announced, which is action adventure meets dating sim meets anime, so we'll see how that works.
Yeah. I mean, the action part looks kind of interesting, but the dating sim part makes me look like I want to fall asleep.
Let's see, we had Season Letter to the Future announced, which is, I think it billed itself as a walking sim, if I'm remembering the trailer. And last but not least, we had the announcement that maybe not the It game, but certainly one of the more notable indie releases in Tunic is coming to the PlayStation later this year, which is a bit of a surprise since everyone assumed that this had a 1-year exclusivity contract with the Xbox platform. Looks like it's only 6 months. So
I think it's still on Game Pass, so I might give that a try before I,
Oh, right. I almost forgot. Street Fighter 6 got a fuller reveal.
it's a thing.
Sure is a Street Fighter.
Yet it's not a final fight. Yet Metro City's there. What the fuck?
Oh, they've been the same franchise for a while now.
I know, but
I know not literally, but
where the fuck is Mayor Haggard?
Give him 20 minutes. He'll show up.
Look, if he's not in the base game, he's going to be like
DLC.
First wave DLC.
Yeah, and the major character debuting here was Chun-Li.
And God, Ryu looks old.
Well, they do have to progress the timeline a little if they want to have a serious timeline, which
it's just
so. Okay, so you bring this up, but it's actually been Chun-Li that's been holding up the timeline. Okay, I guess a bit of Street Fighter lore for the audience. So at the end of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, if I'm remembering, it was that one. Chun-Li actually retires from street fighting.
Which is 3, and 3 was still the furthest one forward in the timeline for quite a while.
Yes. Yeah, believe it or not, Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 5 all take place before Street Fighter 3.
Because fuck your timeline, that's why.
Yeah, it's actually been announced that Street Fighter 6 is taking place significantly after 3. So that means officially Chun-Li has unretired. I'm not exactly sure why this was so fucking hard. Yes, it was dumb to retire her in the first place, but it's like, were they afraid of the fans being betrayed? I genuinely do not get this.
Yeah. In fairness, how many people actually got into the Street Fighter lore?
I'm like, if they can tell you what the fuck's going on with Cammy, there's your answer.
Fair.
That is a can of worms we do not have the time to go to. Oh, fuck no.
Something semi-clone intended potential future body host for dictator.
And that's not even getting into her clone sisters. I am making none of this up.
I know.
And, like,
I know.
and I'm like, and I'm not even sure if this is like, I can even say that like this is the dumbest fighting game lore, because, you know, I'd have to exclude Tekken, King of Fighters, goddamn Mortal Kombat.
We're not. I thought we all agreed we weren't going to be discussing the Mortal Kombat lore ever, because good lord.
Yeah. It's all fucking bollocks. But like I said, so yeah, Chun-Li's back. She's looking a lot more human than, you know, before, which is of course upsetting people who apparently can't get it up if, you know, her thighs aren't these, you know, aren't a certain size.
I think the main thing I've actually heard of it is about her face, but her face looked really weird in 4 too. So
Her face
or
looked
5 rather.
Yeah, her face also looked weird in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. Her face looks weird because
They're trying to make it less anime style, and it's tricky to do that with someone who has who should have distinctively Asian facial features.
I'm like, yeah,
Since she's Chinese.
Yes. And it is kind of contrasting to Ryu, who's, you know,
who's extremely
I
Japanese,
don't know if they were
but
trying
looks
to
like
go
generic Mr. Generics, and yes.
Well, it's not just that. I don't know, he's just apparently finding bigger steroid needles. Somehow
Ryu does not believe in steroids. Ryu gains his muscles the old-fashioned way by wrestling fucking bears.
Oh my god.
And apparently they're mashing him because he's getting wider. I don't know what that's about, but I've seen the footage. I don't know if that was a rendering error, but fucking hell. Like, anyway. And yeah, that's about what was covered in the State of Play. Like I said, when you line it all up, it's not a huge amount of news, in like the sense of a avalanche that a Nintendo Direct provides. But in terms of the State of Play, this is definitely the best the State of Play has ever offered. Like, and it does go a long way to making this thing respectable. It's definitely not at Nintendo Direct levels yet, but definitely come a long way from when it first debuted. Anyway, like I said, that's about it for this. What we talk about next is, I don't know, maybe the Summer Game Fest stuff tomorrow, or I think Microsoft is going on Sunday. PC gaming shows, I think, in between this week and next. It's just a whole bunch of events this week. So
yeah, again, I hate the shotgun approach. I hope we get something to anchor it next year, whether it be E3 or something else steps in.
yeah, you'd think it'd be the Summer Game Fest, but you know, Doritos Pope said to temper expectations for that. So
Doritos Pope.
Anyway, so yeah, that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. The week ahead. So we do have a new episode of MSP happening this week. It's an open show. Yes, didn't get a guest aligned, and Kevin's off this week, so just it's going to be whatever it is that it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
That is to say, we don't really know. That's what happens when you freeform, and you know, MSP doesn't have the backup protocols we do. It's like, oh, guest missing? Let's put in a game and play it.
It's cute that you pretend that Mac would have that much amount of
and coming up on the Sunday, it's something. Mm-hmm. Versus, like, what do we got for MSP today? exactly. Studio. So, like, it's whatever comes to mind. Anyway, let's see. Oh. Anyway, no Friday show this week. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be having reviews of Moolander, Flatland Prologue, War Pips, and Voodoo Detective. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.